An adaptive change is something, for example, of a heart condition, which needs not only potentially a surgical intervention, but also a change of one's lifestyle, how one eats, how one exercises, how one lives. It requires a complete change. What we're talking about, Marty Linsky and Ron Heifetz of the Kennedy School at Harvard called what we're talking about tonight are adaptive changes. So I mentioned Robert Wuthnow. Let me mention the other potential greatest social scientist writing today, and that is Robert Putnam. He teaches at Harvard University. He's a member of a Reform synagogue in Lexington, Massachusetts. He is a Jew by choice. He is someone who took his Intro to Judaism class, concluded, converted, has raised his Jewish family in his Reform synagogue. He came to our think tank and he told us the following. He said, I want you to pay attention to nuns. And we thought to ourselves, really? We're Jewish leaders. He says, I don't mean the kind that wear habits. I mean nuns, N-O-N-E-S, nuns. He said in 1958, 3% of North Americans say that they had no religious affiliation whatsoever. By 2008, the number is 17%. Among young people in their 20s and 30s across all religious lines, the number is between 30 and 40%. What that means is that there's a growing number of young people and people in the wider culture who do not resonate with what we are here preparing to do. They don't find a place for themselves in the religious world. He says, you have got to pay attention and understand this phenomenon. Don't walk away from it, but don't think you have the solution. Last year at our biennial in Washington, D.C., was anyone at the D.C. biennial? Carol Sterling was here, was the co-chair, and did a phenomenal job making it our best biennial. Best biennial altogether. Okay, the President of the United States, he did come. And we had some other wonderful things, but it was an unbelievable gathering of North American Jews. Now, there are many memorable moments. One of the most memorable was in our education forum. Rabbi Jonathan Stein stood up. He's the president of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, our Reform Rabbinical Association. He's the rabbi of a wonderful large synagogue in Manhattan called Shari Tefillah. And he said the following. He said, 2 years ago, I officiated at 70 B'nai Mitzvah, 7-0. This year, that same group is in my confirmation class, but I only have 7 kids left. He said, I don't tell you that because I'm proud. I tell you that because I'm worried. And like Robert Putnam with the nuns, we can't go from 70 to 7 and call that success. So Jonathan Stein told the truth out loud and got a lot of us to think differently as we go on. We've got some huge challenges to turn this around. I'm happy to say your congregation, Holy Blossom, is deeply committed to help us rethink how we engage our youth. Can I ask, how many people here went to Hebrew school? Put your hand up. Keep your hand up if it was the most phenomenal, exciting, energizing experience of your life. I thought so. I thought so. I actually went to Hebrew school, and I thought my Hebrew name was Sheket. It was a couple of years before, and you know how I thought that? Because literally every class, the teacher would just look at me and say, Sheket. And after a while, I'd say, yes. So finally, a couple of years later, some nice teacher said, what's your Hebrew name? I said, Sheket. He said, no, in Judaism, it's your name plus your father and mother's name. I said, I don't know. Well, the teacher, hearing my name, said, you're probably Sheket ben Sheket. When I meet your family, I bet you they're from the same cloth. Can I just tell you that Hebrew school is not getting the job done? My mom, best mom in the world, she used to drive my sister Amy and I to Hebrew school, and she didn't stop the car. She slowed down. She'd pull into the temple, and she'd slow down enough, and she'd kind of just push us out, and she'd say, "I'll be back in an hour and a half. Get Jewish." She'd come back, we'd get in the car, my mom would ask the same question every single carpool. She'd say, "What did you learn?" And we would say, "How did you know that? Were you in the car?" So can I just tell you the truth, friends? Hebrew school is not working. The 70 to 7 is contextual, the larger culture, but we can't actually, there are notable exceptions, and this congregation may be one of them, but 80% of our young people drop out between bar bat mitzvah and 12th grade, 80%. So we got a couple of places working really well, but most of our places not. Hebrew school is not getting the job done. We have to reimagine how we become communities of lifelong learners. That's a challenge. The first thing we have to do in our work is to tell the truth, and this is the time of year we're required by our tradition to tell the truth. No fudging it. The creator of the universe knows when we're fudging it. Did anybody ever hear of a guy named Ed Koch? Who was Ed Koch? Mayor of New York. I met my wife. She was working for Ed Koch. The deal went, if I wanted to take her on a date, I had to meet her at a Koch event where she was advancing, and I'd have to sit through probably 100 Ed Koch speeches just to date this most spectacular woman who became my wife, Susan Friedman. And Ed Koch, at every single speech he ever gave, would ask one question. He would say, "How am I doing?" Right? And can I tell you what people said? Sometimes they would go, "You're not doing well at all." Sometimes we'd pull into a community, people would say, "You're doing great." He actually cared what people thought, and he told the truth and asked them to tell the truth. We don't tell the truth about what's working and what's not working in our synagogues. Can I tell you, the fastest growing group in Jewish life isn't Reform Judaism, it's not ultra-Orthodox, it's unaffiliated. There are more Jews outside our walls than inside our walls, and I actually don't like the word unaffiliated. Unaffiliated means it's their fault. I like to use uninspired, because that's our fault. Maybe they're outside the walls because we have not found a way to inspire them to be part of us. So let's take ownership and let's see what's possible. We've got a lot of different opportunities for engaging. And for some of our people, it means to really get our arms wide and take responsibility for Jewish life outside the walls of our synagogue, and not to think that we literally only care for the people inside. We've got to actually broaden the definition of who's Jewish. So let me tell you, a couple of months ago, I was going to a meeting downtown at the Jewish Federation of North America building. I was walking down Broadway, and I was late. And I looked at my watch, and I was going to be really late. And I looked ahead, and there was a Chabad mitzvah tank right on the street. And there was a Chabad group outside stopping people walking. So I thought to myself, I'm going to be late, not good. I'll just duck around the mitzvah tank. And then in the back of my mind, there was a whisper that said, "Rick, you're a Jewish leader. Don't duck around. Go right through." So I walk up. I'm walking along. There's a man on my right. He's African American. There's a woman on my left. She's Asian. I don't know them. We're just in the flow of New York sidewalk traffic. But somehow the Chabad rabbi knew to ask me, not them. I don't know how. So he stops and says to me, "Excuse me, are you Jewish?" And I said, "Yes, are you?" This man didn't answer with words. He answered with his face, saying, "Are you really asking me?" He pointed to his beard. He pointed to his payas. He pointed to his tzitzit. He pointed to his black coat. And I said, "Appearances are not always reality." And I kept walking. He's still standing there. I tell you that story because, honestly, it might have been the case that we were all three Jewish. He was working with an old paradigm that said that if you were Jewish, you had to look like this, but no longer. Jewish doesn't have a face, and there's not a name. Jewishness is about one's commitment. You can study to be Jewish, and you can be as Jewish as Moses and Miriam and all the great ones. So part of broadening our tent is getting a new image for who we are. We have got to figure out how to broaden those definitions. When I was in Haiti, Mark was kind enough to mention that I was part of a delegation that went to Haiti just a few months after the earthquake that devastated the entire island. And I had to call to get my shots, so I called my doctor, and the nice receptionist, she's heard me call before about traveling to some exotic place, and she said, "Where are you going, Rabbi?" I said, "I'm going to Haiti." And she said, "Why are you going to Haiti, Rabbi? There are no Jewish people there." I said, "You may be right, but God's children are suffering mightily in Haiti, and I have a Jewish obligation to go bring relief and healing." How wide is our circle of responsibility? How big is our sense of possibility of what we could help shape? Is our Jewish world only our family? Is it only our synagogue? Is it only our Reform movement? Is it only the Jewish people? Is it as big as the world? That's a reframe that we need.